Ready whenever you are.
Cool, and are we recording?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, welcome. No, well, still welcome everyone until we're recording. Hope everybody's doing. There she is. Hope everybody's doing well on a snowy afternoon. Happy to start this afternoon's work session and agenda item number 1. And this is the continuing conversation on 619 Granite Street Workforce Housing Project and some updates. And Susan, welcome.
I'm gonna get it started. We have the architect and hopefully our estimator on the Zoom. So it's
Great.
been a few months since you guys have seen this project. Last time was back in July. During this time, we've been working on the plan, refining and adjusting the design based on project goals and also feedback we received from you guys back in July. We've also been working on the budget estimates. So we wanted to I apologize, we also took it to Planning Commission during this time and just received final site plan approval from the Planning Commission. That was on September 2nd. So our current contract with the consultant team is for 80% construction documents. That contract was to be, or that work was to be completed by the end of the contract, which is December 31st of this year. So in order to keep things rolling, we're presenting it again to you guys tonight so that we can get some consensus on the design direction and make sure that everybody's aware of the current construction numbers. So we have Chris Russell from Studio Architecture on the phone, I believe on the computer. And I'm going to turn it over to him to just give you guys a little bit of an overview of the design changes that have happened since you last saw the project.
Susan, welcome, Chris. Can you hear us okay? You've got access for everything you need.
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. We don't see you though, Chris.
Can't see me?
Nope.
No,
Okay. What do you see?
Oh, it's probably because
there
I'm
you are.
pinned. I'm gonna
I
get
can see
you.
Chris.
yeah,
Here we go.
we found him.
There we go.
Okay,
There we
great.
go. There you go.
Well, it's good to be in front of you virtually again. It's been a few months, but glad to be back. And yeah, we'll discuss, quite honestly, there's not a ton of changes since the last time we saw you. I'm going to start sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see that.
We can.
All right. I think we finally figured this technology thing out. So I'm going to do a quick flip back and forth. As you can see, this is where we are currently. This is what was approved in Planning Commission. And this is what we proposed to you previously back in, what was it, June, I believe, middle of June. So the form of the building is essentially the same. There's one change on the west side of the west building. Through your comments and Planning Commission comments, the third floor on the west side of the west building has since moved inside of the building 3 feet. So there was a larger step back on the third floor of the west side, and that was to accommodate, rather to reduce a bulk plane encroachment. So besides that, since you guys last saw it, there has been some updates on the materials, but that is about it. There's been a little more detailing on the railings. We were just showing a vertical, pretty simple railing when we previously saw you guys. And now we have a little more detailing on the first and second floor balconies. All in all, that's pretty much the same. The carports are the same. We were last time when we were talking to you, I think, looking at the carports as a fully integrated photovoltaic system where the roof is the photovoltaic system. That has since been kind of curbed. So we are going to a typical carport roof for the photovoltaics to be added at a later date. Susan, I think that's pretty much the changes since we saw in the middle of June.
Thanks, Chris. Does council have any questions regarding the design direction or changes?
I just ask one question since I wasn't here for the previous discussions. When you mentioned the photovoltaic at a later date, have you guys figured out that there's enough space on this particular design for what amount of offset in the future? Are we shooting for like, do we know we could get 100% up there, or is it designed for a 40% offset? Like to what extent have we thought that through?
It's a good,
Okay, I'm just,
yep. It's a great question. That's something that, yes, we've thought through, from pretty much the inception until, currently we're still thinking through it. So right now, if you factor in, a full project delivery, and that means the core and shell is constructed, the carports are constructed, the heat tape on all of the gutters are added. In addition, the 10 EV ready spaces are plugged in and being used. And now there's a caveat there. We don't know how much they're going to be used, but that is quite a draw, right? So we looked at kind of the full build out. Everybody's using the 10 EV chargers, the heat tapes running. So with the real estate that we have on the roofs of the building, as well as the roofs of the carport, we're looking at somewhere at a 40 to 50% offset of the energy usage of the building. So what that would require is, ownership to, if they want to get to full net zero, you have to look off-site for that. So that's where we are. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And I guess as by way of a follow-up and perhaps just a comment, like, it's really discouraging to hear before this building is even built that we are anticipating putting heat tape on this design. Shame on us. Like, heat tape is, it's really easy to point to EV chargers and say that's the big draw. Heat tape is hugely detrimental. Like, it requires so much energy to run. And we can argue when it runs and that it's not all the time and it's only 6 months a year, but like, we should be designing better. And I think we should be doing a better job with that right out of the gate. So, thank you.
Other questions on where we're at with design? Melissa or Rick? Sorry, I wasn't looking at my screen. Nope.
and I believe we had requested Taylor Coors be on the call. I'm not seeing his name though.
Yeah, I am here.
Oh, hi,
This is
Trevor.
with
Sorry.
Taylor Boyd. Sorry, I was having a problem joining a meeting, so my apologies there for being a little late, but I am on.
Trevor is the person that's responsible for preparing the construction estimate. He's worked through the design development with us. I didn't know if you guys had any questions for Trevor or were needed any more detail on the information he provided in the staff report.
Or follow up?
Comments, right?
Oh, yeah. No, all right. No, I don't think there's any additional questions now on that part. So is it next? to it?
I had a
Sorry.
question. It is not related to construction costs, but it's more for Susan,
Yeah, go ahead, Melissa.
if now's a good time. So Susan, I was hoping you could, let me find it in the packet. Regarding the affordability, so there's 22 units. It says in the staff memo, units will be made available at affordable rents for CDOT employees and for employees that work for other businesses in the Frisco area.
Mhm.
How do we plan to monitor or enforce that? And I don't think there's any, can you just walk us through that as kind of our flagship affordable project right now?
Sure thing. And the truth is, Melissa, we have not fully defined which entity gets what share of the units. And I think it kind of goes back to this operating agreement with CDOT that's still,
Okay.
it's kind of still in the works.
And so will that come back to us at the right time?
It will, it's in CDOT's hands currently. I believe we have David Fox on the line as well from CDOT, if you wouldn't mind jumping in, but we are waiting kind of on their end for some more information.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. The agreement is being drafted as we speak. And I think the anticipation is that we'll split the units 50-50. But that's still to be determined finally. So
Okay.
That will come back to council, obviously.
Okay. Thanks, Susan.
Okay.
Melissa, I can actually attest to something there too. Just wanted to confirm with Dawn. Of the 22 units, 7 are bonus density units. And those would be 100% AMI with a covenant.
Okay, that's
that-
great,
At least some portion of the project,
because they have to be as.
because they have to be.
Okay.
Melissa, did you have other questions? Is that it for right now? Did that answer that?
Yep, I'm all good. Thanks.
Great. So Susan, just to clarify, you're just looking, are we feeling good with this and kind of
Just-
moving forward with the costs that have been outlined and the design has been approved by planning commission so far? Cool.
Consensus from you guys, just a thumbs up that we're okay to proceed with the 80% CDs. Contract.
I'll kick it off. I agree with Jesse's, a little bit of Jesse's frustration on some of the energy use side. I think also this is a prime example of why we need to address some of our building codes around parking. I think we could have done better on this space if we had different code, but I think for what we're working under and the time crunch of getting housing built, I think it's actually a really good project and I'm excited about it. And, per last conversations and other conversations in the housing realm, I'm in full support of moving forward. And I'd love to see anything in the creative financing way and way we can not pay for this upfront and finance it. And however that looks, I'm in full support of any ideas that are out there that keep our cash on hand, but get this built at the same time. Otherwise, I'm in favor of moving forward for sure. Jump in, Andy. I know you had some comments. Go.
Sure. It's been clear of how I personally feel about this project. I'm not going to hinder moving it forward at this point because we're so far down the ride, down the line. But again, and to Jesse's point, we kind of had the opportunity initially with our new green building code and all to try to strive for something different. We ended up with suburbia, throwing some green stuff at it. Doesn't end up being all that, green as far as I understand. I think there's kind of a lot of misses here, but we are down the road. Again, nobody should be going backwards because of what I'm saying. I'm just saying I'm not really a fan, and I think we could have done a lot better. And I think the money situation is that this should also be part of our ask in Washington from our Washington lobbyist. Maybe we can get some resource there. I think that's it. Heat tape it's unbelievable. I actually just put heat tape on my house like last year, and my electric bill almost doubled for my house, so it's outrageous, and we shouldn't be operating there. Ice Dam Central is why we're operating there. We've already covered all that. That was all in the beginning. I'm not going to lament. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Anybody else want
I'd like to defend the team a little better. We've read, I was at a lot of the meetings. I think the team of professionals was hell-bent on making this as green as possible, but also as safe as possible. In the environment we have, with the codes that we have, and the demands that we put on them to deal with units and, they struck the balance. So I don't want you guys thinking that it was heat tape from the beginning. It was heat tape at the end because it had to be. Otherwise, you're completely creating a dangerous situation because of the way the roof lines have to be in order to have all, and I can't go into the details because I just don't remember them well enough to, and don't want to take the risk of being wrong. But it was given every thought possible as to how to not do it, because everybody knew that it was going to be a red flag of not being in love. So the fact that it's there, I would encourage quiet conversations to get deeper explanations, to feel better about something that you're not heavily in favor of, because there are good reasons that it's been done. And otherwise, I support the project and look forward to finishing the 80% contract so that we can actually get to a deal and see if we're going to build this thing. Because all we've done right now is create the paper that represents what might be a building if we can make a deal with CDOT. So I encourage us to move forward onto the business part of this as opposed to the craft part.
No, in the interest of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, I think that's certainly, I think, where we are here. And I've expressed my concerns over time about this. I can tell you, it's a whole lot better than what was there before. And I'm excited to see, the people who are going to take advantage of this movie. I think this is a good step forward. I'd like this to inform the process. Hopefully, if we can move forward at Galena or down at 275 Granite, certainly some lessons learned from this moving forward, and apply those immediately so we can get some more density. We can address the parking concerns right away, and get some more of this workforce housing in our core. So I'm glad it's this far, and I too look forward to getting this done. We promised this to the community for a long time. We really need to be diligent about getting this out of the ground.
Jesse, Rick, Melissa.
I'll just add one more thing, and I appreciate everything that staff has done and everything that the committee members have done and worked with the developers on. But we're about ready to consider an outdoor energy renewable mitigation program where we are going to be asked by our community partners to charge a fee or require people to offset their outdoor energy use because it's excessive. And here we have a project where we're designing it. We have a lot of energy use, and we're only going to be able to get somewhere around 40% offset in the future when we want to finally buy solar panels. And I just have a hard time, affordable housing or not, voting for something where I'm going to have to turn around and ask the community to shell out all this money that we just threw our hands up about. So that's my problem with this. Not that it's not the right project or it's better than before. It is a great project and we need to move forward with it, but I can't do that without calling out this conundrum that I feel like we're in. So thanks.
Would it be worth giving up design? Because part of it was the tiered roofs, the third floor being stepped back, the angles that you lose. If you build
It's the trade-off. And for me, my trade-off, I guess, would be in favor of the climate action piece and less on the design piece.
But that's also, it's exactly what I'm saying. If you design this properly from
We wouldn't be having this
we
conversation.
wouldn't be having this conversation. And now we're talking about Band-Aids on top of a design. And so, yes, we are forced to do it, but we don't have to. We didn't have to, right? And that's, and that's just my professional opinion, right? But again, we're here, we're down the road. I fully agree, when are we putting solar panels on? I mean, how are we even building this and solar panels aren't included with the whole thing? I mean, why are we even talking about $3 million? Why aren't we talking about $3.5 million or $4 million and have the thing covered in solar panels as we need it to in order to only achieve 40%? But what about that, right? I feel like that's a missing part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree, Andy. And I am not gonna sit here and hold up this project. So take this as consensus, but we have just got to like, if we don't start on this project, when are we gonna start? Like,
And that's something we
so
can,
that's my challenge.
as we move through this, we can add solar back into the budget, no problem, and plan on it. And
Yeah, this isn't approving it. It's just
Yep.
making sure you're aware of what that number is
Mm.
today.
Yep.
But certainly, and then I guess, again, a little bit in defense, if you are very much interested in designing to optimize solar, we will need to change our development codes. The way they are written today, especially for the central core district, not 100% compatible. So that's another thing for you guys to consider.
That's definitely, as we're adopting new codes, and we just identify, it's not that it's like anybody did anything wrong or anything, like as we're identifying, how things are potentially worded in order to have a certain outcome, there's no reason why we can't change that throughout. And I think we should, right? Because we want to be able to do it right and do it well. And, if we have to change, that verbiage, why not, right?
want to hear from Melissa, give you a chance to chime in and we'll keep moving forward.
No, I think that is, these points that are being raised are very, very valuable and constructive. And from a process standpoint, I don't know that it would have solved anything, but from my perspective, going through the entire design process before we really have a deal and know how we're going to develop the property seems kind of, to me, it has always seemed a bit backwards. Perhaps that could have helped sort of set the sideboards and the givens and the imperatives earlier in the process. I don't know. I think we should, I think everybody involved has done an excellent job. To Andy, to your point about, the design, I think it did fall a little bit short. That being said, it's very difficult to get, 22 affordable units to pencil. And so I do appreciate the improvements because I do think it came pretty far from the first round, but I really would like us to keep all of this in mind. There are more projects coming down the pipeline, and whether it's following a similar process or evolving it to, put the design secondary to the deal, that may make sense. Bringing a developer to the table before really going down this road could offer some benefits as well. So I would just offer that as feedback. I don't want to halt this. I think it's, we've put a lot of thought into it, a lot of hard work. It's been approved. Let's keep it rolling. And Susan, that is such an excellent point about our building code. And so let's identify those shortcomings and put them on a wall somewhere when it's time to update the code, and let's not forget about them so that we don't have this issue again. But thank you all.
The development code, not the building code. It's not the building code necessarily that's
The
driving this.
development
The
code.
development code,
The
right?
development.
Yeah.
Guys regularly can direct us to make revisions to that code, and that's something we're happy to do. It's just.
Rick, did you have anything you wanted to chime in? Just want to make sure you.
Oh, thanks, Hunter. No. Again, let's move forward. Everyone said their points are very well spoken. I appreciate what really stands out to me is what Melissa said is just design before a deal. But again, I'm going to take this and learn from it and continue to look at those other projects as we keep going. And again, thanks to the design team and community development for making the tweaks and bringing it forward. Thanks.
I do have a question from a resident. Is there sufficient parking for these units?
Yes, it meets our parking code as laid out. Correct, Susan?
Yes, sir. It meets our parking regulations.
Yep.
Okay.
So I think.
Question, like, are there enough
I'm sorry, who's speaking now?
So I think, thank you. And I think another part of, to Melissa's point, and I don't know if this is exactly the case, but I think the unique reason why we had to go this route versus kind of the developer first side is because it's a pretty complex deal between the state and CDOT and ourselves, and that's unique. And I think it's also someplace, knowing where the state's direction is from the governor and other places, this is kind of a model to construction project with them. And I hope we can pass along some learning points from them as well. And we can all come out of this better for the next cooperative deal. Because I know the state's looking closely at this to do further kind of joint ventures in housing on other parcels they own. So I think we have opportunity to give feedback in this process as well. But I think that's created a little of the confusion and we're all learning from it. So, and I also think per this conversation, Tony and Don and I can work on this, but I think this is a perfect almost model. I think that we could create a work session around what could we have done to meet council's environmental goals on this lot and build what we still wanted, and then look at those construction codes to say, you know, where are we deficient and what do we need to change? Because I think until we can see it conceptually on a project that we know better, I think it's hard when we just have some of these presented like we're talking about this versus we can look at this and really kind of tweak what this design would have been or could have been for the next go around and look at what we can need and should change in our code. Because I think everyone I've heard is concerned about the energy use and the environmental impacts and making sure that we're kind of towing the line, if not even more, setting the example for what things should be moving forward. And a little embarrassing we're here, but I think is again, we're moving on and we're learning from it. So I appreciate it. So thank you. And we'll work on that. I think that'll be a good work session in the coming months.
Hunter, with Chris on the line, I'd love to do that with Chris.
Yeah.
And his technology. So if you said, so when you say, if we didn't want heat tape, what's our roof going to look like? And he's magical with design CAD and everything else. So
Chris, if you're interested, we'll invite you up for a future meeting if you want. We'll schedule it around a good skiing day sometime.
Absolutely.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks to everybody on the team who called in. Thanks for your time and thanks for your work, and we'll keep moving forward.
Thanks, Hunter.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Eva.
Will you still address questions?
Technically, normally in a work session, we don't. Is it quick and on the point? And
This is a resident of Frisco, and there's two things that are really bothering me. The first of which is, why would you approve a plan that involves CDOT without a signed contract with CDOT to begin with, number one. And then number two, you glanced over, I know about parking issues, and they said it's up to code. If you have carport parking, there's not enough parking in this building to facilitate all of the units. So address that, both of those issues with me, please.
And for the record, can you identify yourself and your address, please?
300 Granite Street, unit number 6, Elizabeth Fanning.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Yeah, Susan, if you can address the parking, please.
Town code requires 1 parking space per bedroom for all the units that are there. We also require ADA accessible spaces as well as visitor spaces. I believe it was, so we're fully meeting the code. There's 1 for every bedroom, including the studio units. And then there's also 4 guest parking spaces. There are 2 ADA spaces, and then we're providing a total of 10 EV charging spaces. That's cumulative, not, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Thad.
I just wanted to remind council that all of this work is being done pursuant to an agreement that we entered into with CDOT some time ago. As you alluded to earlier, CDOT was not, this is CDOT's property. CDOT was not comfortable entering into an agreement that contained final numbers or final unit counts or cost sharing in terms of the value of their property until such time as we were well down the planning road of what it was we were going to build and how much that would cost. So that's the process we're in right now with the agreement that we are under with CDOT. CDOT is now reviewing the second agreement that has always been anticipated. As we reach the end of this first one, if there was a mutually agreeable design, then a second agreement would be entered into with respect to funding and the final finance matters.
Thank you for the clarification, Thad. I appreciate that and the reminder
Sure.
of the steps in the process, because there's been many.
Sure.
All right, Susan, Eva, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 2 this afternoon, and this is the discussion on the Frisco pedestrian promenade. Don is at the lectern, and Don, I'll turn it over to you. Thanks.
And Deborah, I think, is powering up a,
If you are ready for it, yes.
I am ready.
Your screen's up.
I need glasses. And where is the slide? There it is. There we go. All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. On this nice, fine, snowy evening, I figured it'd be a great time to start our discussions for the summer of 22 and see what we might want to do with the pedestrian promenade. So the main purpose of tonight's discussion is to get some direction from council regarding the use of Main Street for the summer of 2022. Specifically, whether or not town staff should plan on setting up the pedestrian promenade again and moving forward with that with business owners and proposing additional improvements in aesthetics and whether there is any opportunity for businesses to use public right-of-way, including street, parklets, and sidewalks, and if there should be a fee charge for the use of that public space and to establish a process for administration of that public space. So just some real quick background on the pedestrian promenade. It was first established in 2020 as a response to COVID public health orders and indoor occupancy limitations for businesses. In 2021, council again authorized the promenade primarily due to positive community response from 2020. Prior to the setup of the promenade, and again, earlier this month, staff conducted surveys of the community and business owners to gain insight into community feelings on the promenade. In April of 2021, prior to setting up the promenade for that summer, 85% of respondents were in favor of reestablishing the promenade for the summer of 2021. Again, this about a month ago, the survey showed about 73% of respondents were in favor of doing it again for the summer of 2022. Business owners were a little bit more divided on that question. In April, approximately 56% of business owners that responded had support of the promenade. After the promenade earlier this month, about 59% of business owners had that support. Again, due to small sample sizes, these are essentially the same. There wasn't a lot of change in the number for either one of those. The staff report includes a number of comments and the full responses from the survey of 2021 from earlier this month. In general, the comments supporting the promenade centered on the unique community amenity, the ability to safely walk around Main Street, visit it with their neighbors, and have that experience. Those preferring that Main Street would be reopened fully to vehicular traffic expressed a lot of concern about traffic on surrounding streets, inconvenience for area residents as they navigated around the promenade, and also fairness for businesses outside of that promenade main closure area. With respect to the business equity concern, the town finance department reviewed some sales tax data that we received, which is about our only real opportunity to analyze revenues and business performance unless businesses were willing to open their books to us, which I don't know that they would. So based on that sales tax data, we did want to see if there was a noticeable difference between performance, business revenues inside the promenade main area between 2nd and 5th and outside of that area on Main Street. Since 2020 was a really odd year, we used 2021 and 2019 as the comparison years. What that showed is inside the promenade, there's about a 23% increase in sales tax revenues between those 2 years. Outside, it was a 14% increase for that same year. So businesses, regardless of where they were, did better in 2021 than compared to 2019. However, certainly there was a noticeable difference for those businesses inside the promenade. So recognizing that there is real value associated with having additional space in which to conduct business, it may be appropriate to consider and establish a license fee for private use or business use of the public right-of-way. As the town has not previously charged a fee for this use, staff determined through a methodology that's described in the staff report of a potential fee of $1.50 per square foot per year based on the appraised right-of-way value for another project nearby, as well as a factor applied for use of a property like an easement or license, as opposed to fee simple ownership of that property. The fee would then be applied to any business use of the public right-of-way, whether it's a street, a parklet, or a sidewalk. Lastly, we'd like to discuss the process for administration of any of these right-of-way licenses for businesses. Prior to COVID, so back prior to March of 2020, seems like forever ago, and it's really only 18 months, but prior to that, each individual license for any time somebody wanted to use public right-of-way, that approval had to go to town council. With the 30 businesses that used right-of-way within the promenade last year, that would have been 30 individual actions by town council. What that may be not the most efficient use of council's time or the business community's time. So staff would like to suggest that we would do that as an administrative process through the outdoor commercial establishment process. And so that would require an amendment to the Unified Development Code. And we would ask for council's direction to bring that forward. Finally, so we do have four options presented in the staff report as far as potential options for use of Main Street in the summer of 2022. First off, we could set up the promenade with essentially the same extent as the prior 2 years, with refinements in signage, aesthetics, and traffic calming in surrounding areas in order to address some of the concerns that have been brought out by the public. Second option could be, and this was mentioned in some of the survey responses, would be to expand the promenade to include additional blocks of Main Street. A third option would be to keep the vehicle travel lanes of Main Street open for vehicular traffic using some parking spaces for parklets. And then a fourth option would be to use Main Street for vehicle and parking only, with no availability for parklets either. And certainly there's some opportunity for council to mix and match some of those, but staff has a recommendation as well. So staff recommendation for this moving forward is, and we're requesting council direction to direct staff to amend the development code so that outdoor commercial establishments are administrative approvals for right-of-way use. Second, to establish a fee for $1.50 per square foot per year for use of the public right-of-way. And again, that's whether it's a street, sidewalk, or a parklet. And then third, to direct staff to develop plans for the pedestrian promenade for summer of 2022 for the area between 2nd and 5th Avenues, incorporating improvements for traffic movement in the surrounding area. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions on methodology or anything else as we went through this.
I appreciate that. Specific questions, go ahead.
Then can you address, last year we sat and talked about doing traffic improvements and all the stuff to help the problems we had on Granite last year. Just address what was done and did it help?
So, and I think
and
some of
just to
our
clarify, because it sounds like we're saying the same thing for next year. So let's see how it worked.
So there's a couple things, and we would like to propose additional improvements for 2022 based on some of the information that we've gleaned already from the outreach from our Complete Streets program. As you recall, there was some discussion about some bump outs and some other things that would go a long way to significantly improve pedestrian crossings and safety out there, even on a temporary basis. So get into that in a second. As far as 2021, some of the things that were done were specifically, first of all, a major thing was an improvement to the parking lot that's between Second and Third on Granite there. That large parking area was very well organized by Public Works Department, which I think significantly improved the use of that area for the public, as well as made it a little bit safer for any non-vehicle traffic and pedestrians and bicycles on Granite Street. A couple other things were increasing the number of yield to pedestrian signs out on Granite Street. Again, these are fairly minor adjustments to it, but there were some of those minor adjustments. For 2022, based on some of the initial ideas from Tool Design and the Complete Streets program, we'd certainly recommend including some additional stop signs, because as you're aware now, the stop signs are not very consistent going down Granite Street, which causes confusion for a number of the traveling public. We'd also recommend some traffic calming implementing some traffic calming measures, such as extending bump outs away from the curbs and medians, similar to what you see on Main Street, to really define those crossing areas to make it a lot safer for pedestrians and a lot more noticeable for vehicles.
Other questions?
Just regarding the proposed amendment to the outdoor commercial establishment, in reading through the code, there's a couple other things in there that I think would need adjusted as well. Like, you can't have formal seating outside. Like, that's what half of these are. So just, there's a couple, spots throughout that code that I think would also need to be updated if that's ultimately the intent that we land on.
Absolutely agree. And there's a couple other things such that we'd like to add in, such as an annual renewal. Right now, you can have one and keep it for a long time. It also only allows one per block. So there's a number of other adjustments that would have to be made. And certainly we would take a really close look at that and identify those as we bring those back.
Rick and Melissa, if you guys have questions, just jump in.
I got, hey, Don, on the Main Street revenue comparison, and thanks for bringing that forward, because that does, highlight certainly some of the issues, or at least one of the issues that I had. Is there, do you have, and maybe Tony, you can answer this, is there a more of a breakdown beyond just overall retail sales to sectors? There's not a lot of businesses that we're talking about, so it should be pretty easy to understand restaurant versus retail, for example, so we can really identify that, and maybe even to some degree east versus west. So if there's a conversation about extending the promenade, I'd be curious if the eastern side fared better than the western side. This isn't a Twix argument. This is really to kind of understand more how traffic flow impacted the overall flow of commerce, and if that's something that we need to look at.
Certainly, Soleil, who did that analysis, that can be broken down further. We could look at anything. She did drop out businesses that didn't exist in 2019 and did in 2021. So it was really tried to be an apples to apples comparison, and we can certainly break it down further by sector as needed as well.
One thing, just as a point of information, we have to be very careful about. This is confidential information. If we drill down too deep, you could potentially identify a business. That's where we have problems. So we just have to be very careful not to drill down too far, but you could easily identify the business. But I think generically we could do what you're asking.
The evidence supports that this versus that type of sector did this or that. That's fine. I don't even know who did what. I'm certainly interested to know where the break was. It's quite a media, and I'm sure there's some disparity in there. I'm kind of curious if it plays or not. Cool. That is for questions. Yeah, I would agree in terms of the the licensing, certainly, annual for sure. So you can look back, people's performance the year prior can be taken into account if you have problems or continue to have problems. There's people that would be an issue. Pop-up shelters versus tents, that kind of thing. It talks about businesses being Frisco business being able to be mobile vendor, for example, 180 days a year. My question was, is that 180 days in the venue or 180 days with utilizing license? Or can you be in business in Frisco for 180 days and in Golden for 180 days? I'm just kind of curious.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a follow-up based on the sales tax question? So when you ran these initial numbers, was it only the businesses that were utilizing the right of way in this space, or was it just address this block to this block?
It was
Okay.
yeah, exactly. It was
Okay.
that block to that
I
block.
I was
If the
just, 'cause
businesses were in there.
even that, like, that's getting identifiable, but
Mhm.
that is kind of the net, what you want to really understand if you're gonna charge people for the right of way.
Jump in.
Sure. Thanks, Alan.
Hmm?
The only thing I think for questions and that kind of deal is, $1 a square foot, $1.50 a square foot seems really nominal and arbitrary. I mean, just as far as the value of commercial real estate, and for anybody else to use commercial real estate, what does that cost them? So like, not that I want to make it cost prohibitive for businesses to do this, but it should be, I again still believe in the inequity between the businesses in and the businesses out. And if the businesses in are paying something more than $100 a year, that's at least some sort of impact. I don't know or think that that's necessarily enough. So I think that factor should be based a little more off of what commercial space is renting for. Not that, it should be whatever we're building at $400 a square foot, but it should be more in line with, what it costs to use space, to rent space. It is outside, right? So there are factors that would lower it down, wouldn't make it the same as your indoor Main Street space. So that's how I feel with that. I think $1 or $1.50 a square foot is not even going to move the needle for anybody, for us or for them. And yeah, that's going to be it, other than comments.
If I could just maybe respond to a couple of those and clarify, we did do a little bit of research on commercial square footage. Right now, there's a very relevant property that is up for lease on the commercial market, which is the sign shop right over here on the other side of the Loaf and Jug. That is currently listed at $36 a square foot per year. So, and obviously that's a finished indoor conditioned space, which is a little bit different than a unconditioned right-of-way space that's not usable. In order to develop identify and try to estimate what a fair fee might be, we did look at, first of all, we had a very recent appraisal done on a piece of right-of-way that a property owner is applying to adjacent to his property to have that vacated and added to his property. So we have the actual value on an appraised basis of what that right-of-way is. Then we also took a look at from the CDOT GAP project, which occurred, well, just is almost nearing completion. In 2019, the town granted a couple easements to CDOT for use of town property during the use of that. And they applied a factor of 6.5% to the fee simple value of that right-of-way in order to get that. And so that's where, again, recognizing that an easement may be different than license for business use, rather than a 6.5% that CDOT used, and to make it a little bit more of a round number, I used a 10% number when applying that factor, and that's how we got to that $1.50 a square foot. For a frame of reference, that would be for a 10 by 10 parklet, that would be $150 per year for use of a parklet. And also acknowledging that that is a full year, even though the use of the parklet might not be for that full year.
Yeah.
It might be more reasonable simply to charge that same rate on a monthly basis.
Right.
I don't think anyone's not going to take you up on that.
Or some would, and that's just part of you're seating patrons there. It's not just driving through it, and so the value of that property, and nice work for coming up with the formula, I mean, like, you need a baseline somewhere, right? I mean, and that's good job, because there's a lot going into that, but I just think the value is higher there, and at least even for other businesses to perceive of what that value is as well. Thanks. So, I don't know what that number is,
Yeah, I'd take any suggestions on what that number might be. We did look at it on a per month basis as well. From an administration perspective, certainly doing it just as a set annual fee that people have to renew every year. It's certainly a lot easier than trying to say, oh, as well as Public Works, setting up the parklets, taking down the parklets, whatever else. It could be a little bit of an administrative and physical challenge for Public Works in order to do that setup and takedown. So that's why we did look at it on an annual basis. Again, using that sign shop lease, if they used on a per month basis based on $36 a square foot a month or a year, that'd be $3 a square foot a month per year. So a buck a square foot on the street might be a little high. So again, I'll take any suggestions anybody might have on how to set this fee. The only I will say also the only other jurisdiction I found that charges a fee for this was the city of Grand Junction in their downtown Main Street area, where they've created these permanent outdoor patios for like Rock Slide Brewing and a few other businesses. When they narrowed their Main Street, they have $1 a square foot a year for those permanent installations. They are not yet charging for parklets. I did have a conversation with the administrator of the director of the Downtown Business Association over there, or district, and they are looking at charging a fee for parklets, but they haven't settled on that as of yet.
I was just gonna say, this is a great one approach to appraising the value. We've got the market approach. There's other methods, and I really don't think I don't think anybody's going to make their decision on what we're going to do with the promenade based on whether we're charging $1.50 or $7 a square foot. So I'd kind of like to put this in the back shelf and amend your recommendation to say charge a reasonable fee to determine later, so we don't get bogged down on what the rent is.
I just want to make sure that Melissa or Rick don't have any questions, and we'll just jump into tackling these question by question from the staff report.
Yeah, I have no questions, just comments.
Great. Thanks, Rick. Any questions or?
No questions, Hunter, just some, like Melissa, some comments.
Okay. Well, should we jump in and tackle the big one first? The promenade. Little out of order, but I think that will be the bulk of the conversation that might lead to some of the direction on the next two as to where we end up. So maybe let's do comment specific or direction you're personally feeling towards the staff recommendation number 3, which is moving forward with the promenade for the 2022. I'll just turn it over to you guys. Whoever wants to jump in first, go for it.
Go for it.
No, you're happy to? All right.
Happy to.
Oh, you, Andy.
That's the
Thank you.
reason why I got back here tonight. So, my thoughts on the promenade have not changed. I enjoy the promenade personally. I feel that there is absolute inequity in and out of the promenade. We all came up with the parklets, and we got the grant and all, and that actually creates seating space up and down Main Street. It actually, activates each block more so than we'd possibly have before. Nobody inside the promenade is a have to. Everybody inside the promenade is happy to be inside the promenade. No promenade, nobody has said, well, you're going to crush me with no promenade, right? And otherwise, I am getting, you are crushing me from businesses outside the promenade. I still get that. I still get that today. As soon as we closed the promenade, it lightened up for them, right? They made more money than they did before being outside the promenade. So with that, it's my recommendation to go number 3, which is just the parklets. I feel there's a few other things along with the whole conversation, such as we did this for COVID. If we're going to do this for any other reason, then let's absolutely define what this reason is and why and where, because it's not COVID, right, anymore. The extending it, it sounds good in theory. CDOT absolutely said, CDOT engineers said, you cannot have the first 2 blocks of Main Street. That is, you would render the light inoperable.
The recommendation was to extend this direction.
Sure, that way. But with the question was east or west, being able to extend it or anything like that. That's just a comment on that. And that's just CDOT. I think it's more, this whole conversation is more of the permanent conversation of, we want to turn this into 16th Street Mall, then let's actually invest in all the infrastructure we need to support it around the outsides, Granite and Galena and everywhere else. Let's build everything out in order to actually do it and do it properly. But I'm still just stuck on the inequity of being in or out of the promenade, and I'm siding with the businesses that are out. And so I say no promenade, just parklets.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Melissa, do you want to jump in? Looked like you were leaning forward.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. But yeah, I'm happy to. I really have a clear opinion on this at this time, and it's similar to Andy. I don't necessarily feel the same way about the equity and inequity, but I do think that I don't think I think it may exist. I'm not sure the data completely supports it. What I do think, though, is that our street really is not designed as a pedestrian promenade. And while I love the thought of it, I think with our business environment fully back up to speed, it became a, I'm choosing my words carefully here. I found myself wanting to avoid the area of downtown altogether, especially on peak weekends. And I know that was not the goal, and that's not the way that I felt in 2020. So I think from a design perspective, it was a great idea. I'm happy that we did it this year. I think that our street needs to return to vehicular traffic as it is designed and well put, Andy. If we want it to be a pedestrian promenade, by all means, let's start, let's set the vision and get the infrastructure in place. But we can't keep going ad hoc year to year and shutting down Main Street. I was not a fan of the large detour signs and the plastic sign that was falling down half the time. It was towards the end, it really looked a bit haphazard, and that made me kind of feel like, okay, we're ready to move past this. I have heard a lot of negative feedback from business owners as well, just saying, which is not necessarily reflected in the survey, that many of them really feel strongly that it shouldn't come back. So I also want to honor that. I do really love the parklets and better utilizing the sidewalks. And it was such a great positive outcome of COVID, sort of breaking down those barriers, literally and figuratively, in our code that would allow us to use the sidewalks, get people out eating on the streets. I think, though, we need to taper it back. I think sort of the sidewalk sale atmosphere really needs to be tapered back. I mean, whether it's, and I don't have the solution, but, maybe there's a height, limitation that we restrict racks of merchandise to a certain area or a size or height. But it really sort of had that flea market look to it at certain places. And I take great pride in our Main Street. We have invested hugely in our Main Street. And so I think there was a time in 2020 into 2021 to allow us to be lenient on things like that. But if we're going to allow merchandising and seating, let's really hone in on that. Let's develop some regulations that will last us, the next 3 to 5 to 10 years. And regarding the fee, same as Andrew Aronson, whatever it covers, that's fine. I don't want it to be any sort of profit, generating exercise, but definitely cover staff time, administrative time, and that's where I land. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Go for it, Rick. Oh, Rick just.
Yeah, hey guys. Thanks, gang. I'm pressed. I just went over the Complete Streets plan, or the video that was out yesterday, and just to not hammer, but to come back to building out town to be able to support a pedestrian Main Street. There were a lot of ideas to help improve Granite that we could do right away without a large cumbersome investment as we build out that plan for that street moving forward for multimodal transportation. But just in the short term, to make that a better usable transportation avenue. And then the other statement or thought on my side is I think the parklets meet the need. There was, you guys have seen some of the space was used for not putting out any retail. Some of it was just put out for some entertainment items for some of the businesses, which if that works for them, if it works for them, it works for them, but that's not the intent. Was to entertain. It was to get people outside and commingle and have the ability to get out and see each other in safe places and fill the needs that they need in our shops. So with that, no matter which direction we go, I really think we need to invest in the supporting infrastructure that needs to be in place to make the promenade more successful than it's been, and the general usage of town safer than it's been. And again, let's firm up Granite, and I'm a parklet person, and open up Main Street. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rick. And I know you're pressed for time. Appreciate it. Jess, you were going to jump in.
Yeah, excuse me, kind of want to lead with the sales tax analysis, because while this is very enlightening and very important to address and understand, it's still 14 and 24%, or excuse me if I got them off by a percentage or two, over 2019. Like, we're not even batting an eye at that growth, and that's huge, right? Like, that's a big deal. And we don't know how much of that is driven because we have free, cool amenities like the promenade. And so I recognize that that's important, but I don't put a lot of weight on just that, because it doesn't tell the whole story. You guys know, I have loved the promenade. Everyone that I have talked to shares the same, and in fact has gone a step further and encouraged it to become permanent with those changes to the infrastructure. It's a lot. I mean, we're talking about a lot of capital investment to do that. And I don't think that we should put this on the shelf just because of that. And so I would like to continue to learn and grow and continue to have that amenity for our community and for our visitors. So I'd like to see it come back for 2022 as staff has proposed.
You go for it, Dan.
Well, I'll try to start in between somewhere. A lot of great comments, and for me, it all started and stopped with the idea of the town creating an area of competitive advantage for no reason once the rationale for public health and safety passed. It became a zone of economic improvement for certain areas. Sales tax dollars were invested into businesses in this area, and businesses outside of this area found themselves in the very opposition to competing against their own sales tax dollars in a zone that was created, somewhat or continued, I would say, to some degree in a real capricious context, because this was not being considered. The amount of investment that's gone on along Main Street over the years, generations, is just significant. And I think you need a reason, a rationale to change an area of established commerce and flow and patterns beyond just it creates an interesting sense of community. If you look at what Frisco has going for it, this is almost the last thing is to kind of look around and say, wow, this place of natural wonder, what we need is a really cool place in the street to hang out. And it just doesn't make sense to me on any level, especially to the degree that we go to put money into the peripheral area of our community where we engage our natural environment, where when we look at the opportunities we have at the marina, we look at what we're doing at the PRA, we look at what we're doing in the Frisco's backyard, and with our trail plan. We look at what we're putting into our events, and I don't look at our events calendar as really our community calendar, and we go to great lengths to engage our community in different areas of our town, in the parks, in the periphery, and we do a wonderful job of doing it. I don't think we lack for areas of community engagement. And to the degree that we need it, they've existed for decades, and they're the bars and the decks and the patios that have been improved and built and have already existed now for, in Frisco along Main Street for years. So to me, the promenade continues to be a contrived experience that we don't need, and that money can be so better invested into enduring amenities. And you probably almost know where I'm going with this. But
Tubing.
yeah, summer tubing. But anyway, but to me, it's just emblematic of this idea that it's okay to spend. And I looked at the investment inertia that this is going to accrue on Promenade, because as it stays, there's going to be, much like the barbecue challenge, there's going to be pressure to animate it. There's going to be pressure to do more things, bigger boats to paint, bigger things, bigger. And the 75,000 is going to become 100,000. Much like the barbecue challenge became, as much as it did. And the surveys are great, but in none of these surveys is that corollary question asked where people need to evaluate that experience in the context of the cost. And is the promenade worth $75,000 a year plus staff time? Is the barbecue challenge, for example, worth $150,000 a year plus staff time? And when that money can, we're talking about $250,000 a week for childcare. We're talking about, the $200,000 that it might cost to subsidize an ice rink. So, we can easily spend $1 million to animate medians, but we struggle to find money to animate the marina in the wintertime. And, it just, again, it's a challenge to me on so many levels. We spend a lot of time in the summer. We see this across the West, mountain towns, not just in the West, actually everywhere, where they're going out of their way to reduce marketing, going out of their way to reduce their exposure and let their natural brand speak for itself, be amplified by the visitors who experience it and broadcast it and become ambassadors. And that's enough for us. And I've been saying this for years, I'm sorry, but what we've done to encapsulate those experiences at the marina, encapsulate those experiences at the PRA and in our backyard, that's enough. We need to make those better. We need to have the staff to support those experiences better. And, I do put a lot of stock as a small business owner on Main Street who was outside the venue for decades. I watch people walk past my business for 20 years till they get to 4th and Main. Fills at 4th and Main, and then it backfills down the street. That's how it works. And it's going to continue to work that way, even on steroids, if the promenade continues to exist in the context that it is. And that money's real. It's small. I've heard this from just about every restaurant outside the venue. They're frustrated that they have to compete against their sales tax dollars. They don't understand the purpose, and they're experiencing the pain. So parklets, I agree, Melissa, 100% with your comment. Every time I get to 4th and Main, I look down there, and to me, it just looks like a flea market, and it does not look attractive. It is not what I think is supposed to be happening. A few parklets, I think are great. I think when they started, I think it's an idea whose time has come and gone. And all they're doing now, I think, is displacing parking spaces needlessly. And again, I think we need to work on getting people, to those areas, dispersing them through town, not congregating them in the middle of town. This is something, again, that we continue to hear. Town's too busy. You can't compartmentalize the conversation about the promenade and the density with the complaints about short-term rentals and the density they deliver. So I think it's all part of the same issue. So anyway, yes, I don't support it in front of the year for those and some other reasons, but that's would like to see Main Street return to 2019.
Where do you land on the parklet idea? I know you touched on a little bit with some of the.
$1.50 is too low, but I think there needs to be. I think there needs to be much fewer. I don't think they serve as much of a purpose. It makes parking difficult and dangerous. I think with people trying to squeeze in between so many, if you only have one or two along each block. But I don't think they're useful in the scope that they're being utilized right now. I think they need to be scaled back. We talk about different ways to, mechanisms to do that, but I think they ought to not be free, and the cost ought to be commensurate with the space, and to some degree prohibitive for capricious use.
Stan. I think that leaves me, but it also, I think the majority has spoken pretty clearly, but I think I'm gonna say my piece because I fall, probably not surprisingly, because I'm not changing my tune either. I appreciate the whole conversation. I think this is, I think we're doing our jobs by having these conversations and making these decisions and not always agreeing. And I couldn't disagree with all of you except for Jesse on this. I think the benefit is far beyond what the survey shows. I think the money earned from Summit Boulevard all the way to the hospital has grown because of the promenade. I think the benefit to the entire community is huge. To date, I've still only had 3 business owners who've reached out to me who are adamantly against it. And only one of which has said it's actually affected their business. And 1's inside and 2 are outside of the promenade. So I think it's always fascinating who we talk to and where we get, because I don't disagree and I don't not believe that you guys are hearing otherwise, but that's sadly all that's reached out to me. But I think the overwhelming feedback I've had from business owners, residents, part-time residents and visitors has been, this is one of the most amazing things and defines the character of Frisco and sets Frisco apart from Breckenridge, Silverthorne, Vale, Aspen, name it. Like, go through the list, because we're not just another street you drive down. You get to get out of your car, walk around, engage, be a part of the environment. They're still going hiking, they're still going biking, but when they're going to eat or shop, they have an atmosphere to do it in that mimics the outdoor surroundings that we pride ourselves on and market ourselves with. So I think the benefits far outweigh, and I do think there are some inequities, and I appreciate that. I think I did a little, unfortunately not as much research as I would like, but if you read back to the Aspen newspapers and the Boulder Daily Camera, East Cooper Avenue and 16th Street Mall all had these exact conversations, and all the complaints were, you're going to put me out of business. No one's ever going to buy the real estate on either end of these pedestrian streets. We're doomed. And I think if you look at what's on either end of either of those pedestrian streets, pretty successful, thriving businesses, some of which have been there for a long time. So obviously I'm in the minority, so I'm not going to change it, but I just want to express, I think it was an amazing thing. I think we should maybe potentially try to figure out how to see if we want to go down the path. I think, as you said, I think if we're going to do it and we're going to do it on a permanent basis, let's look at what that takes.
Let's do it right.
What's that?
Let's do it right.
Let's do it right. And I don't disagree with that at all. And I think, Dan, the one thing that you said that I do appreciate is, if we did keep doing it, there would be the pressure to continue to animate it and make it more. And that does concern me. So I totally agree there. But I think it was a huge success, and I think it's sad to see it go. I think we're going to see the same backlash that Breck had last summer when they went against their community survey and the overwhelming support for it. But if that's the direction we're gonna go, I'll stand behind it. I think it's like we're definitely in the parklet realm, and I think Dan's and Melissa's points are good ones, and maybe we'll revisit what is the function and the desired reason to have parklets on our main street, so we can flush that out a little bit, and that might help then direct Don and staff on what do we then charge for said parklets based on that. But I just wanted to, I think I'm sad to see it go. I've probably never seen more people taking a picture of a street in my life, and I don't think we will again until we bring it back when we do it right. But I think it was great, but the majority is moving on towards parklets. So let's transition the conversation towards that, and we'll make those just as good as the promenade was. So anything else on the promenade before we move on to the other questions from staff?
Question there. Yes. Given the council's position, would it be reasonable to earmark the funds, 75,000? We had originally planned on a Main Street study, is to earmark those dollars for the examination of the permanent promenade. What type of, physical changes need to take place to make this a more viable project and product for the community? Use this as a window of opportunity to study it, even though it's not going to happen next summer, but study it and bring you back some potential solutions that hopefully would address everyone's concerns.
How would that go with the complete streets plan that we're working?
Different. I mean, there's some overlap, but I think you need a specific study of just Main Street and the promenade. This is a unique animal.
Disagree with that, Tony. I think what would worry me is that we're going down the complete streets part, and then if this study contradicts that, I think we're funding too competitive.
Yeah, I also think that it's not the right timing to say, no, we're not going to do the promenade, so let's study it to see if we should do the promenade. If we want to postpone this conversation, if we want to spend the money to get a study done, let's have that conversation, but let's not say yes or no, let's not study it after we've decided. That doesn't seem like the right order.
Other thoughts on Tony's? Well, back to the complete streets plan, or yep, we know there'll be plenty of places to spend it on street work somewhere.
If I could make one small suggestion, building off of what Tony said and also what Mayor just said, is we are anticipating coming out of the complete streets plan, once that is completed in late January, there's going to be a number of short-term implementations that we just mentioned very briefly earlier. And if you saw the presentation, there's in there as well, such as the bump outs on Granite Street and some other things that could make a difference, just to see what works and identify it and tweak that plan a little bit before we move forward with permanent improvements. So it may be an opportunity, rather than to do a study on Main Street, to do a earmark that for implementation of short-term things from the complete streets plan.
Well, I think the money's been appropriate, so I think as we move forward with that, we could probably potentially redirect that at that point. Yep, that sounds good. Council. So let's jump back into, I'm going way out of order this evening, but to the first question is back to the updating our development code around parklets. Is there support in making that an administrative decision, but looking at some of the things that Jesse pointed out and Dan pointed out, and cleaning it up, bringing it back to streamline it? Since everybody's in support of keeping the parklets, this kind of needs to happen. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I think we want to be careful with, with how much we're limiting how these can be used, especially if people are going to pay for them. If they're going to pay for them, then I feel like they should almost get to use them however they want to use them, because not everybody needs seating, for around tables. So there's that, and you guys know the backlash we had with music. I mean, bottom line is the music scene all said Frisco doesn't want music on Main Street from how we said it should be. And that, I couldn't feel is like further from the truth, but that's just how it was perceived. And if we go saying you can't, put your cornhole out there or whatever, then
you're gonna end up with the same thing that way, you know, and it's like, why should I rent this thing if I can't use it for my, you know, my basketball backstop or whatever?
It's got to generate revenue. I think important that the licensing fee reflect that. I mean, that's bottom line, that's what it's about. I mean, it's a space to generate revenue. If you want to spend $300 a year to, you know, and you could come in, so you'll have to say, you know, but
Dan, can you speak into your microphone? I can't hear you.
sorry.
That's okay.
So, but no, I don't disagree. They pay for it. There should be, you know, a certain, you know, uses that are, I think, complementary to, and that's a rabbit hole you might want to go down, but associated with your business, you know, and it's about expanding your business out into the street. I just, like I said, you know, but whatever the licensing fee should be, I think people consider that in their use.
Right, right. And if you're, you know, if your retail business happens to sell clothing and you have racks of clothing, then, you know, that's generating revenue. And that's, you know, if you have cornhole out there and it's, you know, keeping the family there while somebody's shopping inside, then it's that too, you know, and that's what it is. And I'm sorry to, you know, and this is kind of just a guess, but I really don't think we can point the growth of everyone here to the promenade. We can point an extra 10% to the promenade is what we can do. That's how I feel about this. You know, everybody with the people are coming, whether we like it or not, and they're going to be here and they're going to spend money here. And, you know, and that's that bottom line there. You know, I don't think that we're going to affect any way anybody's bottom line, especially negatively, if we're not doing the promenade. People are still going to be here. Too many people, unfortunately, and you know, then I won't end up going down to Main Street.
I would just like to add on to what you guys were just talking about, and I couldn't hear all of it, but I would just propose that there be some oversight of the business that's conducted on the sidewalk, because it shouldn't be anything they want. And you know, definitely point taken about the music. But in terms of the retail environment, some things just don't belong. And so I don't think we need to debate that tonight, but let's look at some, you know, some guidance on what would make sense and complement our Main Street and work, and not feel like, I know there were some issues with, you know, certain retail businesses next to other retail businesses that felt like they were imposing or encroaching on their space or taking away from their vibe of, you know, the neighboring business. So there really are some concerns once there's a huge amount of retail and dining and everything happening on the sidewalk. So it worked. We got through 2020, 2021, but let's continue to refine it and improve upon what we've done.
And I think for the sake of time, I think we need to, we'll put this parklet use conversation on another work session. And I think, Don, it looks like there's kind of out of that, we'll also support your first two questions on what the amended code will look like and then a fee. So
yeah, certainly we'll draft that up and bring that back as to a discussion to council, and then bring it through the code amendment process, which is planning commission and then council for ordinance.
Just, you know, just go to the name. It's a parklet, and they started as little parks on the street, little place to sit, you know, out of the way. And if they're going to stay parklets, I think they should stay with the intent of the genesis of the parklet. And park is in the name. I think that should define the use of something. So that's a park, small park.
great, thanks. That's it for the work session. So actually got us a few extra minutes instead of going way over into that one. So thank you, Don. Anything else you got enough in that conversation? And we'll
No, I
follow
think
up
I have pretty clear direction from council on how to move forward with this, and thank you.
Great, thank you. We will be back at 7 o'clock for the regular meeting. Thanks, everyone. I know.
Let me do that on the microphone. Sorry, that's yours.
It is unmuted and.
I see it is 7 o'clock on my screen, so welcome everyone. I hope everybody had a good day out there in the snow. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Frisco Town Council. May I have the roll call, please?
Certainly. Mortensen.
Here.
Aronson.
Here.
Burley.
Here.
Fallon.
Here.
Held.
Here.
Incan. All right, we'll pass on Sherburne.
Here.
Thank you. Rick, will you let us know when you're back in? Please. Great.
Next up, we will have public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment this evening may do so now. Please come to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Please be topic specific for anything that is not on this evening's agenda and limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Public comment.
You got Jim Fan. Oh,
We've also got somebody on the
And
phone.
then, yeah, those online, I will call on you next. No, Hayes, go ahead. You were most of the way there.
All right, my name's Hayes Walsh. I live at 223 Creekside. I'm speaking for myself. This week, we'll find out if my petition to have a simple housing ordinance put to vote will make the ballot. The knowledge gained and relationships built through the process of collecting signatures have made the experience a success for me, regardless of the outcome. I should thank council because it was y'all's failure to respond to citizens' valid concerns and unwillingness to offer meaningful mechanisms to participate in the legislative process that made me Frisco famous for doing the bare minimum, which was give people the hope that they may get to vote on a specific ordinance. Council has disillusioned residents to the point that the people with the best insight and most thoughtful perspectives have totally abandoned participating in the process. They know that their input falls on deaf ears. Hunter, last 2 meetings ago, you felt obligated to spend time talking about my lack of respect for council because after spending 100 hours collecting signatures and engaging with the community, I spoke for 4 minutes rather than 3. Newsflash, no one respects council, and more specifically, no one respects you as a leader because they don't even know who you are or what you stand for. When I ask people what they think about the mayor, the most common response is, who is the mayor? Or I didn't know we have a mayor. And that's a shame because under our town charter, you are equal to all other council members. Your only power lies in notoriety of title, in a willingness to make your position known, garner local support, and whip council to your agenda. This town has immense potential to maintain unique character while prospering, growing small business, and improving life for locals. The promenade is a perfect example. Something need not be broken to make it better. Unfortunately, our leadership has no vision. Rather than degrade me, you'd have served the community better to talk about your stance on the housing issue, which you won't. You previously said, and I quote, I want to make sure the housing conversation is holistic and complete. Complete includes your opinion as the leading citizen of our town. Yet when Chad Harrison posted on Facebook in 2019, asking your opinion on taxing STR and transparency on the issue, you did not respond, but you did manage to respond to multiple other posts on the same day, just the ones that complimented you. What about what you wrote in 2016? That you don't think STR is a significant problem and that Tabor has a greater negative impact on the community. Tabor allows residents to vote for or against tax increases. I get it now. You don't want people voting. You want to be the one making the rules, regardless of what the community thinks. Classic bureaucrat. You lack the fortitude to lead and represent Frisco's residents, or maybe it's ambitions towards being a career politician. Either way, your unwillingness to inform constituents of your position on the most high profile and heavily debated topics affecting our community is an abject failure of duty. I implore you to grow a spine and be a leader. Say what you think, do what you say. It's what the residents deserve considering their taxes pay your $1,000 a month council salary.
We have other public comment, someone calling in.
yeah, you got Jim Fanning here, 300 Granite. We were looking over the granite options for the Granite Street rebuild. And I guess first thing is I didn't understand what row equals 80 feet means. And what will be the process going forward? I didn't see that anywhere on the website. So the question is how do we engage the engineers or whoever's doing the design so that we make sure that it gets the best job done? Is there a,
Thank you, Jim. We'll have staff follow up and answer those questions and make it clear for you. I appreciate that feedback.
yeah, and let's get some stop signs out there. I spent most of the summer in terror watching people at Third and Granite dodge cars, run stop signs, and damn near hit pedestrians and bikes. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to make public comment?
I wasn't gonna make a comment. Mark Waldman with Summit Mountain Rentals. My wife's gonna make a comment. She's gonna have a lot of great things to say. I just want you to know, this is a great town and it's a great council. So you guys should know that. Okay, I disagree with a lot of things, but you guys are great. I love living here. Good place. I think you represent us. I hope you listen to my wife. Thank you.
Dear Town Council, my name is Mary Waldman, 261 North 6th Avenue. I'd like to address the council regarding the proposed 7.5% excise short-term rental tax. If you want to raise money where 100% of the tax goes towards building rentable apartments and affordable housing, then I want to help you. As a founding board member of Summit Alliance of Vacation Rental Managers, and a property manager with a good reputation, I can advocate other property managers to support it. But 7.5% is simply too much. It makes Frisco the most expensive tax jurisdiction in the county. Rather than raise the money you're counting on, you're going to lose visitors to other towns. Silverthorne is building a beautiful downtown along Blue River with stunning views and brand new constructions. And it's cheaper to rent in Silverthorne than in Frisco. 7.5 tax will hurt Frisco small businesses. If you think that is the right number, then let's do an economic study to see its impact. It's just too risky not to. You have it till January 25th to get it on the April ballot, so start the research now. Do not submit a 7.5% excise tax measure now. At the very least, wait till Measure 6B passes in November, extending 5A for another 20 years. This will give you the assurance on funding. If Measure 6B passes, then you can choose a less punitive amount, a smaller number, like 2%. And avoid a full-out campaign opposing the short-term rental tax come April. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment? If you're online, you can unmute, raise your hand.
I'm not seeing anybody raising their hand.
Seeing anyone else online, anyone else in attendance? Great, thank you for the public comments. I appreciate that. We'll now close public comment and move on to mayor and council comments. Nothing? Yeah, we don't have to. Great. Seeing no mayor council comments, we'll move on to any staff updates from town manager. Tony, any updates this time? Okay, great. It's going well so far. Moving on, next up is the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Been moved by Councilmember Fallon to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
By Councilmember Aronson. Any discussion on the motion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Aronson.
Yes.
Burley. Yes. Fallon.
Yes.
Held.
Yes.
Incan. Absent. Sherburne.
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes. Great, thank you very much. Next up is new business. This is agenda item number 1. This is resolution 21-25, a resolution approving the Colorado opioid settlement memorandum of understanding, also known as MOU, the Colorado subdivision escrow agreement related to the MOU, and the subdivision settlement participation forms, releases of claims required in connection with the MOU, I will now open up public comment and turn it over to staff and town attorney Thad for a description of what we're looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I should start with an explanation as to why it is this item appeared on the agenda without discussion in a prior council work session. The reason for that is the town, along with every other Colorado municipality, received a request that it consider and enter into this IGA. It's titled a Memorandum of Understanding, but it is an intergovernmental agreement. Received a request from the Attorney General that the town enter into this agreement as of about October 1, which was about the deadline for the last council packet. The request came with a cover letter expressing urgency and a need, please, to have this approved, if at all, by November the 5th and returned to the Attorney General's office. And if that wasn't possible, could we please give them a call and tell them what the town's intentions were? This is a whole lot of paperwork, but what it really comes down to is that if the town enters into this agreement, participates in this MOU and the related agreements, it will then be eligible, though not likely, we'll talk about that in a minute, to receive money from the multi-state settlement with opioid manufacturers and distributors. The MOU sets up a statewide framework under which money is shared, monies received from those settlements are shared between the state and the counties and the municipalities. It is somewhat formulaic, but it is also based upon a committee made up of representatives of those various constituencies. The real bottom line on all of this is that nobody receives any money except with respect to either reimbursement or payment for very specific purposes under the underlying settlement agreements with the opioid manufacturers. All of them must be very closely related to towns' prior money spent in response to the opioid crisis. That could be things like, for instance, reimbursement of monies that the police department may have spent for personal protective equipment in dealing with somebody who was overdosing, the drugs to be administered in the event of those overdoses. Those sorts of very specific expenditures could be reimbursed for past or paid for future expenditures. It is, though, a lot like this whole situation is a lot like the form that I think we've all received at one time or another. You are part of a class action unless you send us a note back saying you don't want to be part of the class action, in which case your rights will be preserved to sue on your own behalf. This is sort of the opposite. We will be part of this settlement agreement if we sign up. If we do not, the town would reserve its rights to go after the opioid manufacturers individually. There are incentives in the underlying agreements with the manufacturers such that the greater number of municipalities that sign up sooner, the more those settlement funds will ultimately come to. The purpose for that, of course, is that part of this settlement is the waiver of claims on the part of the town and every other municipality that signs up against the opioid manufacturers. And of course, the more waivers of claims they have against them, the more valuable the settlement as a whole is to them. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. There were included, I believe, in the packet materials, frequently asked questions and an executive summary, both of which have been prepared by the Attorney General and were sent along with the request.
Any questions for Thad? That I'll open it up for public comment. Anybody wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment. Back to council discussion. I personally don't think we want to take on all the opioid manufacturers on our own. So I value Thad's time a little more than that. So I'm good signing on with this. It just makes sense. So no other discussion. Perhaps motion.
I move we approve resolution 21-25.
It's been moved to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Held. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, can you call the question, please?
Burley. Fallon, Held,
Yes.
Incan, absent, Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Thad.
Thank you, everyone.
Moving on to old business, this will be agenda item number 2, and this is the second reading of ordinance 21-11, an ordinance levying general property taxes for the year 2021 to help defray the cost of government for the town of Frisco, Colorado for the 2022 budget year. I will open up the public hearing and turn it over to Tony. Are you doing the introductions?
Leslie Edwards, our new finance director, we're so thrilled that stolen her from Breckenridge. And keep her here for a long time.
Yeah. Leslie,
They're a great
welcome.
start.
We're excited to have you and yeah.
Yes, this is my second week as finance director for the town of Frisco, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you and the great staff here at the town of Frisco. And I would like to say I bring 16 years of government finance experience with me from the town of Breckenridge, and I look forward to adding on to that here at the town of Frisco. So thank you. On to mill levy business. So this is the second reading of an ordinance that is required to set the mill levy for the upcoming year. And the approval of this ordinance will allow the town of Frisco to impose a mill levy in the amount of 0.798 mills in property tax. And the amount of the preliminary valuation that's been provided by the Summit County assessor is $264.7 million. So that would equate to $211,253 in property tax for the town of Frisco.
Questions for Leslie, and welcome. We're excited to have you as well.
Yeah.
No questions at this time, then I will open up for public comment. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment? Yes.
David Rolling, I live at 123 Rose Crown Circle. Simple question, is it the same as it has been, or is this an increase proposed? Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Yep. Any other public comment? Anyone online wishing to make public comment? Seeing
Not seeing any raised
none, I'll
hands.
close public comment and back to council discussion. Perhaps motion.
The first question to Leslie would be harder than that one as a form of welcome to council,
Yeah.
but that's been, did a good job.
Part of
Thank you for
inheriting a
being
budget.
Yeah. I move that we approve ordinance 2111, ordinance.
Perfect.
I need cheaters.
Thank you.
Ordinance levying general property taxes for the year 2021 to help defray the cost of government for the town of Frisco.
Excellent. Been moved by Councilmember Aronson. Is there a second? Second by Council Member Fallon. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Fallon,
Yes.
Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
you, Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is agenda item number 3. This is second reading of ordinance 21-12. An ordinance appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amount and for the purpose as set forth below for the town of Frisco, Colorado for the 2022 budget year. I'll open up the public hearing, turn it back over to our new finance director, and the floor is yours again.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So I would like to start in introducing this ordinance with a special thank you to Bonnie Monet, the former finance director. I hope that she is out exploring and enjoying her retirement and not watching this council meeting, but she certainly deserves a special thank you along with other staff and council for all the hard work that has been put into this budget before I arrived here. And for all the years that Bonnie did make the budget what it is today. So I really can't take credit for this, but I will still speak on it on behalf. So this is the second reading of the ordinance that is required in order to appropriate the funds for the 2022 budget. While I wasn't present, I do understand that as a council, you had one-on-one meetings with Bonnie prior to her departure to discuss any questions that you all had. And then it has been discussed previously at a work session. So in this ordinance, you will see that the beginning fund balance, actually, I'm so sorry, I did prepare a
Would you like me
slide.
to turn that up?
Yep. So I provided some handouts for you all. And I would like to share that. on the screen up here. So we can just see a little bit of a graphic presentation about the proposed budget. So in this ordinance, you will see the beginning fund balances for all of the town's funds in 2022. These total 37.3 million. And so that is the amount you see here in the chart in green in the beginning fund balance. And here it's displayed for each fund. So in the ordinance, this is combined with the 26.8 million in proposed revenues that's proposed in the budget, which is applied against the appropriations for related operating expenses. And in this chart, you see the changes in this fund balance in the from the green to the orange. And then in the blue, you also see here the amounts that are set as reserves by policy. So you can see that we are meeting those reserves for the funds that require it, which is the general fund, the water fund, and the marina fund. So in the ordinance, it outlines the expenses of 19.7 million for operating. There is also 887,000 in debt related expenses, 20.5 million in capital related expenses, 928,000 in transfers, and the total expense and expenditures are proposed at $42 million. That leaves an ending fund balance, which is in this chart at 22.1 million for the end of 2020. I have also prepared for you a second chart. This chart displays the financial sustainability of the town of Frisco. And the purpose of this is to show not only the percentages that the expenses represent of the ending proposed fund balances, but I've also displayed that in the number of months that that would represent. And these number of months are related to the 2022 total expenditures here in this chart. I'm sorry, operating expenditures. So, you can see here, I've highlighted also in blue on the bottom here, the water and marina funds, because those are enterprise funds and they really operate like a business would. So they're a little bit different than, say, the general fund, which is more of an operations. So I think that sums up the appropriations that are presented in the ordinance. Are there any other questions or items for discussion?
Any questions? Sir Rick, no. Seeing no questions, any public comment?
On that graph that was just shown, why isn't each individual thing graphed out compared to the fund? It just looks like a single line comparing everything. It's very hard for me to delineate expense against funds. If you could go back to that slide.
Can you state your name for the record as well, please?
Elizabeth Fanning, 300.
Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm sorry, so this graph here is showing the beginning fund balance versus ending fund balance. And the numbers are presented.
No, not that one, the next one.
Okay, so this is showing the percentage that expenses represent of the ending fund balance. So for example, the first line, the general fund, that is 50% of the expenditures representing of the ending fund balance. So that's about 6 months the town could get by. And you can see that that lines up with the 50% on the graph up above. Does that make more sense?
I just would think that we would have a delineation of each one of the funds compared to what the overall is. I would have just maybe done that graph a little different, but now I can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we did discuss that, and we've seen that in our original budget conversations and how that.
It's very confusing, and I think it kind of distracts from what the real appropriations are for what each one of the delineations is, whether it's general or water or marina.
And Elizabeth, I would point you to our website and past council packets. There is the very detailed fund by fund, and I think all the information you're looking for is there and is available online. And so I would direct you towards that, because that's been a part of kind of the in-depth process that goes into the creation of this ordinance. And this is just a very high level for the second readings purpose. So we have seen that, and that is available And if you do need help finding that on the website, please reach out and we can direct you to
No,
where
that's
that.
fine. I would just like to have seen it in a simple graph, but thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
That
guys.
the information that you're seeking might be spelled out in the resolution that follows the ordinance.
Seeing no more public comment, move it to council discussion. Motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the second reading ordinance 2112.
Been move to approve ordinance 2112 by Councilmember Held. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Aronson. Is there a discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Held,
Yes.
Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen,
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley,
Yes.
Fallon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up's agenda item number 4, and this is resolution 21-24, a resolution summarizing expenditures of revenues for each fund and adopting a budget for the town of Frisco, Colorado for the calendar year beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022. I'll open up the public hearing. Turn it back over to staff.
So this resolution is the last document that you'll see in order to adopt the 2022 budget. This resolution officially adopts the 2022 budget that we just discussed in the prior ordinance. And I think that it was pretty much explained at that point. Although this resolution does spell out the total expenditures by fund, as well as the reserves in addition to the revenues that are available for spending.
Any questions from council? Seeing none, I'll open up for public comment. Anyone wishing to make public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment and back to council discussion. I think just as this is the last one, I just say, again, I appreciate what you said for Bonnie and the whole finance team, and we greatly appreciated her tenure here. And I'm confident that she left you in a great place to start your new career here. And welcome and looking forward to doing this again next year and with new eyes and new vision. So
Absolutely.
glad
Thank
you're on
you.
board. No other discussion, perhaps motion. Oh, we got to pass this one first. Yeah.
Resolution 2124.
Been moved to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Burley. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Held. Any discussion on the motion? Can you call the question, please?
Certainly. Incan,
Yes.
Sherburne,
Yes.
Mortensen.
Yes.
Aronson,
Yes.
Burley, Fallon, Held. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other items, Dan? Any?
So let me pick up where I left off.
Move to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening out there.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm with you, Dan. I was ready to.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.